Herkese merhaba, hoş geldiniz. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. Allow me to switch to Turkish for a short outline of the event, the rest of which will be in English. Herkese tekrar merhaba. Bize bu akşam Silvina Der-Meguerditchian, Our Names yani isimlerimiz adlı video çalışmanın gösterimine katıldığınız için çok mutluyuz. Öncelikle Aras Yayınlar'a, Yaşayan Salon ekibine ve özellikle Laura Sarı'ya bu etkinliğe ev sahipliği yaptıkları için teşekkür etmek istiyoruz. Ayrıca Kültür Akademi Tarabya ve İstanbul Goethe Enstitüsü'ne de destekleri için teşekkürler. Gösterim birazdan orijinal Batı Ermenice ve İngilizce altyazılı gerçekleşecek. Filmi Türkçe altyazılı izlemeyi tercih ediyorsanız YouTube'daki chat box'ta kısmında gerekli linki ve şifreyi bulabilirsiniz ve sonrasında bize yine YouTube kanalında katılabilirsiniz. Gösterimden sonra sizi filmin yönetmeniyle, sevgili Silvina'yla, filmi seslendiren oyuncu, yönetmen ve tiyatrocu Arsinée Khanjian ve akademisyen Jallatyan kendilerini sonra daha detaylı tanıttıktan sonra bir sohbete davet ediyoruz. Sohbetimizin dili İngilizce olacak. Our Names adlı video çalışması Mıgırdiç Margosyan'ın Gavur Mahallesi ve özellikle Türkçe'de Dikran, Nazar, Haco ve Diğerleri adlı bölümüne dayalı. Margosyan'ın 1940'ların ve 50'lerin Diyarbakır'ında çocukluk deneyimleri, gözlemleri ve hatıralarını harekete geçirmeye, geçmişi bugüne işlemeye hedefleyen bir çalışma. Göreceğiniz gibi Osmanlı döneminden arşiv fotoğrafları ve arşiv filmleri kullanarak aynı zamanda Margosyan'ın Diyarbakır'ı ve kentin Osmanlı döneminde oradaki Ermenilerin sadece hatıralarına dair değil, hayatlarına dair bir köprü kurmaya hedefliyor. Şimdiden iyi seyirler dileriz ve tekrar İngilizceye dönüyoruz. Once again, welcome everybody. We are very happy that you're joining us for the screening of Silvina Der-Meguerditchian's Our Names. We would like to express our gratitude to Aras Publishing, the team of Yaşayan Salon, and especially Laura Sarı for hosting this event and shepherding us through the process, as well as the technical team. In addition, we would like to thank the Kültür Akademi Tarabya and the Goethe Institute for their support. The stream will begin shortly in the original Western Armenian version with English subtitles. If you prefer to watch the Turkish version, you'll find a link and the necessary password to access the video in the chat box. And you can join us on this YouTube channel afterwards. After the screening, we invite you to a conversation with our director, Silvina, the narrator, Arsinée Khanjian, and academic Jallatyan. I will introduce them in more detail after the film. A few words about the film, however. It takes its title from the chapter Our Names from Mıgırdiç Margosyan's autobiographical novel Gavur Mahallesi, and in Silvina's words, aims to revive the author's experience of his childhood in Diyarbakır, mostly of the 1940s and 50s. The film features archival photographs and moving images depicting Armenians in the time of the Ottoman Empire. In this way, the film creates a bridge between Margosyan's Diyarbakır and the older, more vibrant life of Diyarbakır Armenians. We invite you to enjoy the film, and I give it over to you, Silvina.
Խնոն մայրս էր։ Խանում էր անունը, հայրս իրեն խնոգս էր։ 13 տարեկանին հորս հետ ամուսնանալի հետո, մորս խանմությունը վերջացած, խնոյության շրջանը սկսած էր։ Արդեն մեր այդ կողմերը Տիգրանագերդի մեջ, երբ աղջիկները ամուսնանան, իրենց անուններն ալ կփոխվին։ Խաչերը գլա խչե, արշալույսը Էրշո, Եղիսապետը Էրսո։ Նվարդնալ նվո։ Աղջիկներու անունները երբ այլևս գնոջական անուններու կփոխվին, անոնց բարդականություններն ալ կշատնան, կբազմանան։ Կուսական անունները երբ այլևս գնոջական անուններու կվերածվին, իրենց առաջին բարդականությունը ալ բազմանալ ու շատնալ է։ Նախ կստիվին կոնե 2 տարին անգամը զավակ ծնիլ։ Անշուշտ լավ եւ քովելի է որ գիմը ավելի շատ մանչ զավակ ծնի, փոխանակ աղջիկի։ Մայրս երբ խնո եղավ, գարկով եղբայրներս, քույրերս աշխարհ եկանք։ Դեր Արսինն ալ մեզ մեկը մգրդելու համար 2 տարին անգամը դուն գուքար։ 2 անգամ ալ դնորդ ներքի գուքար, դոներուն։ Սուրճ մը կխմեր, քովը պարակ գելինջիկ սիգարմը անպայման։ Լավ գիշեմ անգամը գելինջիկը լմնցած էր, մայրս փուտով բահարները փոխադրեց գելինջիկից դուփի մեջ եւ հրամցուց։ Մայրս այդպես էր, որպես Աստուծո եւ դեր Արսենին անտեպ ամոթով չմնա։ Մենք մգրդվելու համար եկեղեցի կամ ինչպես որ մենք կսենք, ժեմ չենք երթար։ Դեր Արսենը մեր դուները գուկա։ Բրինցե դաշտի մեջ քիչ մդակ ջուր, գնկավոր արջևնալ ջերմակ լատմի երբ կավեր, մնացյալը թյուրին կորձեր, այդ կորձը դեր Արսեն լավ գիտեր։ Կպանար իր քիրքը ու կսկսեր աղոթել։ Դեր Արսենին աղոթքին կխառնվեր թեշտի մեջ լողալու պատրաստ երեխային ջիջն ու լացը։ Պատկերը շատ ավելի աչքարու եւ դպավորիչ կդառնար, երբ փոքր սենյակի մեջ խունգին հոդին գուքար կմիանար դիրացու ասադուրին կամ ինչպես որ մենք կսենք, դիրեցու էստուրին, կամ էստեդուրին, զիլ, ուժեղ, ցենը։ Երբ գարկը գուքար երեխային անունը ճշտելու, մենք գիտեինք, թե անիգա եթե մանչ մներ, առհասարակ կանվանվեր դիկրան։ Ինչու չեմ գիտեր, մեր այդ կողմեր դիկրանները շատ են։ Գերևի դիկրանագերդի մեջ դիկրանը լալ գվայլեր։ Մեր այդ կողմերը այդքան շատ դիկրան գար, որ իրար մեզ ադելու համար իրենց անուններուն արջևը անպայման ածագամը կամ ուրիշ հատկանշական դիդղոսմը ավելցնել քիչմնալ բարդավորություն էր։ Կինեք, դիկրանը մերիր, որ դիկրան է, խև դիկրան, մեր պեսեին դրեցին, պրտև խջուգը, այսինքն ազադեցավ խեղջը։ Ինցակ նոնոյենց դիկրանը էսկրուտինեն էգիր։ Վանեսենց դիկրանը հևնդծիր է, դիկրոյենց դիկրանը էգրեհն իր է, սորը նուրը էգրեհդիգի մներտեմ։ Դիկրաններեն վերջ երկրորդ կարգի վրա դիրանները գուկային։ Թումասենց դիրան, էրգան դիրան, պոտպեր դիրան, ցեխևել դիրան, Մղսի դիրան, հերսոտ դիրան և ուրիշներ։ Այս հանկավոր անուններեն վերջ կարգը գուքար խաչադուրներուն, անոնք աշատ էին։ Այսօր խաչադուրները, խաչոները պիտի բատմեմ։ Իմ կիցածներուս մեջ նախ կերիս կար, դեմրջի խաչոն, երգատակոր ձեր կերիս, աշխարի ամենեն զորավոր, հուժգու մարդը իմ կերիս խաչոներ, արդուն մուրջը ծեր կգարներ, մինչև իրիգուն հեն, գարմրած երգատներ կծեծեր, խոպ, մանքաղ, ծիու ոտկերը գաբելու կորձիկմա, այսինքն կեյդ, հետո կամ գեր գշիներ, շամպուր գշիներ։ Հիմա թու կսեք, մարդը մինչև իրիգուն երբ երգատին իր ուզած ծևը գուդա, անգե ավելի զորավոր մեկը գլա, Գսեն թե աշխարի վրա շատ կդրիչ, շատ ուժեղ, շատ զորավոր, շատ հուժգու մարդիկ ապրած և հետևալ մերած են։ Գրնալն, բայց ես կհավատամ, թե կերի խաչոս ամենեն զորավորն է։ 30 տարի առաջ երբ անոր քովը երգատակորձի աշկերտ էի և փուկ կաշեի, այս իրականությունը խոշոր աչքովս տեսած էի։ Հիմա 30 տարի վերջ նույնը գխորիմ։ Եթե ինձի չեք հավատար, կացեք ֆերիկյուր Իստանբուլի սա հայահոտ թաղը, պնդրեցեք կերիս, հարցուցեք, դիկրանագերցի դեմրջի խաչոն, կդեք ու բիդի համոզվիք։ Իսկ եթե չհամոզվիք, այն ադեն գիտեք, որ թուգալ մեր թութում կլուխ խաչոյեն դարբերություն չունիք։ Այո, մեր դիկրանագերդի խաչոները մեկնալ թութում կլուխ խաչոներ։ Կլուխը թութումի գնմաներ, թե ոչ թութումը խաչոյեն գնմաներ, ադիգա մինչև այսօր անլուծելի կձիկ մներ մեզ դիկրանագերդիներուս համար։ Վերջերս իմացանք, թե թութում կլուխ խաչոյին թուն գնկահայրը ոչ թե Քիրվեմանոն է, այլ նույն ինքն մեր հրճագավոր թայագը Քուրեմաման։ Թեև մեր Սուրբ Կիրակոս ժամուն դոմարներում մեջ ճշտված չէ, թե ով է անոր գնկահայրը, բայց զուրից կշրջի, թե Քուրեմաման է անոր գնկամայրը և ան նույնիսկ գնկահայր չէ ունեցեր։ Որ մի երբ թթում կլուխ խաչոյին մայրը, պրուշը, գհվնդնի, ընգողինգինգնի, լուրգուդան գվազեն Քուրեմամային գսեն, Քուրեմամա, տեզ հասիր, պրուշը իվենդ է, դղեցկին է։ Kızı şenzevek, tutun kluh kızı. Kure Mahmut hokkin henetir, siz antarı eretir. Pereniz patmanets, sans pen çidese. İş tutun kluh peniz şenzevek. Kıl hofte kelu der ercivero eşker kuzisi kes. Եվ խաչոյին անունը գմնա թութում կլուխ խաչո, և գնկամայրնալ Քուրեմաման։ Խաչոները մեկն ալ եմենջի խաչոներ, Մեր այդ կողմերը հայերու մեծամասնությունը արհեստով կամ երկաթակորձ էր, կամ գլայակորձ, շինարար կամ եմենիջի, այսինքն գոշկագար։ Գոշիկ հակվիլ քեղկցի կորձեր։ Քյուղացիները կամ ինչպես մենք կսեինք, քեղացիները միշտ եմենի գահակվեին։ Դրեխս էլ գուզեմ։ Երկու քույն գլար, սև կամ կարմիր։ Եմենջի խաչոյին համբավը ամբողջ Տիգրանագերդի մոդագա քյուղերու մեջ տարածված էր։ Այնպես ինչպես Տիգրանագերդի խոշոր ցմերուկներուն համբավը ամբողջ Թուրքիո, նույնիսկ աշխարհի վրա։ Մոդագա քյուղերեն քյուրդ քյուղացիները գվազեին գուքային ուստային մոդ։ Ուստա խաչո, ժմրասոլ կիբդե, այսինքն ինձի գոշիկ մդուր։ Ուստան կրդերեն գխոսեր, նույնիսկ զազայերենն ալ, մաքուր և գոգիկ։ Եմենջի խաչոն գարցներ, թե ինչ քույն եմենի գուզեին։ Քյուղացիները ընդհանրապես կարմիր քույնը գնախնդրեին։ Ուստա խաչոն այս անգամ գսկսեր գլուխը քերել, բեխերը ոլորել, աչքը երեսը շփել, հազալ և հետոյալ ինքզինքին լուրջ հով մդալ ու ուսել նաբե։ Ուստա խաչոն, եմենջի խաչոն, երբ նաբե էսեր, քյուղացիները փորձառությամբ գիտեին, թե այդ անիդեալ նաբե, այսինքն ոչ փարը, այոյի վերածելու համար պետք էր նաև ուստային նվիրել ակլորմը, կամ փասմը մեղր, կամ կիլոմը գարակ, կամ քանի մահատ հավգիտ, կամ ալ ստլմը, թույլմը, մածուն։ Եթե քյուղացիները համարեին, չուզեին տրամինքով մածունը գարակը կամ հավգիտը դալ, այն ադեն ուստա խաչոն չեր դար եմենին, դժվարություն կհաներ, ուրիշներուն համար շնաձեմ, անոնց դերը գա, անոնք աբսպրած են, ադոնց տրամը և գարակը շադոնց կանխիկ արնված է, և այլն, ու գսեր նաբե։ Եմենջի խաչոն առանց յուղի, առանց մեղրի, առանց բենիրի, եմենի չեր ձախեր, ադիգա իրեն բես վարբեդի մը չեր վայլեր, անարքանք էր ադիգա։ Իմալ առաջին և վերջին եմենիս ուստա խաչոյին վարբեդ սերկերով շինված սև եմենիս եղած էր։ 10 տարեկան էի, հայրս ծերկես բռնած, զիս ուստային խանութը դարած էր ու ուսած, խաչո, Ստուղուս եմեն մի գերես։ Վարբեդ խաչոն գլուխը գեղն է իմաստով շարժած, ոտքից չափ արած էր մեծ ուշադրությամբ։ Վարբեդը մեղր բանջած չէր, ոչ ալ մածուն։ Երկուքն ալ քեղացի էին, նույն քյուրեն, հրեդանեն էին։ Երկուքն ալ լավ դամա գխաղային, սա 16 քարով գխաղան, ճադրագի խնամին է դաման։ Երկուքն ալ զազայերենը լավ գխոսեին և ուստային պդազ ագրաները հայրս կքաշեր ակցանով։ Հետո հորս շինած ոսկի ագրաներուն շնորիվն էր, որ վարբեդ խաչոն հբարդորեն խնդար կրկչալով։ Խաչոները մեկնալ Օսկերիչ խաչոն էր։ Օսկերիչ խաչոն երկու համբավ ուներ։ Լավ ոսկերիչ էր, իր ցերկերուն մեջ ոսկին ուզած ծևը գուդար։ Ոսկին խաչ կլար գախվեր հարսնցու աղջիկներուն վիզեն։ Աբարանչան գլար գպայլեր գիներուն տաստակներուն վրա։ Օղեր գլար գախվեր պլտակներեն։ Մադանի գլար նուրբ մատները գզարտարեր։ Օսկերիչ խաչոյին երկրորդ համբավնալ լավ ծուկ որսալներ։ Գիտեք, դիկրիսկեդը թարերի իվեր համարորեն օծաբդույթ գվազե գերտա դիկրանագերդի հսկա բարիսպներեն անտին։ Երբ գիրագի օրերը սուրբ գիրագոս ժեմուն մեջ դեր Արսենն ու դիրեցու էստեդուրը հազիվ թե գերքեն արավոտ լուսոն և գոչնագի ղողանչը հազիվ թե գահասնի խենչեպեք հայաշատ տաղը, Օսկերիչ խաչոն շադոնց իր թորը, այսինքն ուրգանը արած, գերտա տիկրիսկեդը ծուկ որսալու։ Գորսայալ, միշտ մեծ և համեղ ծուգերը, այսինքն շետբոտները, սրինքները անգորսա։ Հետո իրիգուննալ, երբ ծուգերը տաբագի մեջ ջզր դալով հոգի գուդան, ոսկերիշ խաչոնալ օղի շիշը գպանա։ Դեր Արսենն ու Օսկերիչ խաչոն փնավ լավ բարեկամներ չեն ու չեղան։ Օրմը Օսկերիչ խաչոն երբ կհիվանդանա, մայրը տոպալ տումեն մինչև դեր բաբային դունը գուկա եւ գաղաչի ու գսե դեր բաբա ինչ գեղն է։ Էգո խաչոյիս կլխունը վդեր անգերտը բիղարիրե։ Դեր Արսենը զայրացած գբորա։ Թումե Jem չեգո մերտու կլուխ Evederen çim gerte. Kine irtsugerune setoriken evederen gerten doğut kolxun. Meymenal xanami xaçongar. Xanami xaçon tertsager. Şalvar ggarer. Ana polor hay varbedner ubes ir korzin varbedner. Polor kürderun het yer xoski iskser araçim pargıllar xanami. Verçe İranonu mnats xanami xaço. Գսեն տեգարկ մբադմակիրներու համացայն հայերու եւ քյուրդերու միջև ցեղային գաբակցություն կա։ Որքան ճիշտ է, չեմ գիտեր, բայց որքան ճիշտ է, որքան իրավ է, ադիգա խնամի խաչոյին հարցուցեք։ Անգիտե։
I think what Silvina said, a memory without a place early on, it was a very ongoing, subconscious sort of sense of my identity, because I had all these memories and I did not know anything about them firsthand. And whenever I have been later on in my life to Istanbul, Turkey, or even when I went to do my symbolic hike to Ararat, I never managed, and I think part of the reason was that I could not bring myself to manage to go to Diyarbakır, which is a very strong connection in my sense of Armenianness, Armenity, and my identity in general. Even though I have a mother's side that comes from Erzurum, Diyarbakır was a very present through my paternal family, where the family, even my father's generation, was born in Lebanon, used to speak in Diyarbakır dialect. So all throughout my childhood, I had heard that dialect. I had come to love that dialect. And I have to come to really think that it had a particularity as a dialect because of the form of expression, of the vocabulary and the tonality of these people. And this was not only true to my family. I realized that whenever ladies gathered around my mother, my grandmother's once a month meeting, they all had this wit and humor the way they would talk. So I think eventually as an actor, I really absorbed as a child this reality. And even though my generation, the grandchildren, did not really had to speak in Diyarbakır dialect, but in order to communicate, especially with my grandmother, who did not know, never learned neither Arabic in Lebanon after the genocide where she came, nor a formal Armenian. She only communicated in the dialect. So it was an opportunity for me to kind of practice it. But then when we came to Canada and she passed away, that practice and that reality disappeared. But my need to connect with Diyarbakır grew further. I did not know how to make that possible. I thought about a play at one point, but I did not feel confident that I had enough of the first the vocabulary, but also the environment to create something. So when Silvina came up with the proposition under the auspices of Hushamadyan, and because I knew about the work of Hushamadyan as a memory sort of based institution, and of course Silvina's work as an artist, and then the proposition of the author, Mıgırdiç, what did I say? Mıgırdiç, Margosyan. I thought, my God, there is a book on. There is a book of stories written partially like with the dialect of Diyarbakır. So when I started reading, I have to say that I was like in sort of complete fascination by it. So I had to bring back with the proposal of narrating all those sounds that I had heard in my childhood, all those intonations that I had in my childhood. Of course, I knew all the songs of Onnik as well, but very interestingly, I was critical of the accent that Onnik had. Now, if you don't know the Diyarbakır dialect, you wouldn't know that, but I knew, and I worried about myself. And as I was listening today again to myself, and I was thinking, oh, I have an accent in the Diyarbakır dialect, which has been an issue in my career, the notion of accent in English, for instance, in that sense, or even in Arabic to a certain extent when I would. So suddenly I realized that even though the memory is very strong, and I know what the sounds of this dialect are like, it's very difficult to imitate it or render it again when you're not in the context. So it was an incredible, beautiful challenge, and I'm very thankful for this project that it came my way as an actor, and I would say it's the closest to a lot of things that I've done on identity and on my Armenian sense of my Armenian identity.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Arsinée. I should also note that there seems to be quite a few comments that are expressing how moved they are to hear it narrated through your voice, especially. And, you know, your being part of this project really adds, as you also so beautifully expressed, and I'm sure there's much more to say about this, many more layers to Silvina's vision as well. If you allow me, and please also Silvina and Arsinée at any point, feel free to chime in. I wanted to turn to Karan and ask a little bit how you see this engagement between literature and audiovisual work. And I should also note that, you know, there's been a lot of theory, of course, about the question of genocide and genocidal, if the extent to which any kind of quote unquote representation of genocidal violence and loss is possible in art, in literature, in the visual realm. So as someone who comes from comparative literature, I'd be very interested in how you think about this interaction of image, of sound, of literary text.
Wonderful. First of all, I'm very happy to share this panel with the other co-panelists. I want to thank Silvina for asking me to be here. I want to express my pleasure to meet online Banu again, once again. Also, I'm happy to meet Arsinée Khanjian. I will just kind of offer a couple of observations. I think along the way, I will answer the question that you posed, Banu. So I think on a few levels, of course. First of all, this is there's a lot of archival footage in this with this work. So there's this documentary dimension to it. There's a lot of multimedia kind of archival footage. So the different media are in conversation with one another. So in terms of representation or artistic practice, I think we should remind our audience that we shouldn't think of one media as dominating the other. For example, the visual part is not meant to just be subservient to the literary work that is being presented to the audience. So these media are in conversation. And that's the beautiful part of Silvina's work. So in addition to being the documentary work, it's also very metaphoric. In the multimedia sense, it's very figurative, and that's what I actually like about Silvina's work in general, but also this particular film. And so the different media, the different archival footage, the different techniques, they talk to each other in a very evocative manner. And so this evocativeness is what interests me right now. And I think it leads to this question of memory, which was touched upon both by Silvina in her opening comments, but also by Arsinée Khanjian. The memory that sort of captures us, or we think we are in touch with, be it collective memory, individual memory, etc. So what I would propose is sort of like a mini argument for our conversation today, is that the kind of memory work that I'm curious about with this film is a memory that is very disobedient memory. It's a very surprising kind of memory. It doesn't fall into categorization in an easy way, right? And so, for example, Banu, when we talk about, if we were to talk about the genocide, yes, of course, this is a post-catastrophic work, but it's not just post-catastrophic. There are all kinds of other connections and bridges, as Silvina, and also at the end of the film, I think the description that comes at the end is a very nice sort of like proposition about what the film might be doing. So to my mind, the memory work of this film is very disobedient, it's very surprising, and it sort of captures its audience in an unexpected way, because a lot of us expect some sort of prepackaged ideological statement from about the genocide or about different cultures, Armenians, Kurds, Turks, etc. And so this is the beauty of the work, to my mind, that it catches us in the middle of these things, and possibly, because it's surprising, it's disobedient kind of memory that is trying to work for us, with us, possibly it can suggest new kinds of futures for us that go beyond this ordinary expected kind of lines of what happened, what we think happened, what they think happened, etc., etc., etc. So it's a very, so I want to kind of leave my remarks with that disobedient, surprising memory work, figurative, multimedia, of course, all that stuff. But so I appreciate that disobedience, that almost uncategorizable kind of memory that is being worked before us. So it's pretty wonderful from that perspective.
I like very much what you're saying about disobedience, because it's triggering another dimension of how we go back to our history. So, I mean, the Armenian genocide has been understood as from political to academic to historical sort of memory. But if someone doesn't follow any of these ideological approaches, there is still a possibility that the mind and the memory, just out of a context of certain exposure, to say, oh my God, I'm remembering still, and I have to address how far this memory goes. And that's where the disobedience of the human, construct or anthropological human construct comes into place. And that argues even more potently about, the obstacles of saying, leave this kind of memory to historians, leave this kind of memory to, well, they don't say, but academics or whatever. But when you're confronted with the disobedient human mind and spirit and the heart, there is not much argument there, because it is unnatural almost in a way, if you want to see it that way, to remember something that you are not exposed to. And yet there are other signals that create an environment of memory. So for instance, picking up on the language as a child was probably something that worked at the level of the subconscious need to connect with my heritage or legacy in that sense. There was nothing political or academic at that point or anything else, but it did lead me in my case, but it doesn't mean that it leads everyone else. But, Silvina, you might want to say something about that because you work on this a lot.
Yes, I would like to say that, in fact, I grew up without images. So this is, in fact, the lacking of images, the lacking of how to imagine where they come from, how they live, everything was one of the driving forces why I was so interested to see postcards, old photographs. This is really the driving force of the beginning of my career, I would say, the lack of images. And on the way, since I was in the Armenian school, we learned Western Armenian. And there was, for me also, a big, need of, when I became older and I was reading like Borges and, like high literature, I felt the lack of capacity of, first of all, to know the Western Armenian high literature and be able to read it. So my approach is a very, let's say, multi-channel approach, because I reach this literature through other languages. I didn't read, I read like parts of it, but I read it in English. And for example, Grigor Beledian, that I love very much, and I am so grateful that there are also in France the Edition Diasporale, that they were translating so beautiful books in Western Armenian so that I could access through French. By the way, they are also publishing on Mıgırdiç Margosyan very soon this book, the translation. I am so grateful for that. So I think in all these dimensions, and how to engage in a, as with my diasporic being and artistic being in a contemporary way, with this Western Armenian text, having the help of French, of English, and maybe German, and then through the images also engage, let's say, public, like in the sense of maybe younger people that are also all the time, you know, with this multimedia, they are so, so every day they see all this. And then I thought this is a kind of a new approach in the sense of linking all those words and bridging all those words and recreate something that could, as you said, bring us to the future and maybe new ways of creating without being maybe, you know, so proficient in Western Armenian. And also, of course, in the case of the dialects, I'm very, very focused on that. I did before for Hushamadian, thanks to the Gulbenkian Foundation that they are financing, and I'm so thankful that they have this focus on Western Armenian and giving opportunities and financing cultural production, because language, I mean, of course, if you support a school where you have the teachers and they teach the language, but the language is not in a vacuum, needs a world. So it's important that also these other cultural productions are also supported, and thank you very much for that. I did a film about the Khanjian dialect, and I am very, because now our speakers, slowly, they are not anymore there, so I am so behind this that I would like to continue to archive and present in this way other dialects that are waiting for us as Hushamadian. Yes.
And do you want to go? Please go ahead.
If I may just add, I just wanted to sort of like echo what you just said, both of you, by saying a few words about the provincial literature from the provinces. I think that's the term that in Western Armenian literary criticism or writings is used to refer to literature that is not from Istanbul, but is from Eastern provinces, so to speak. I think to echo what Silvina is saying, this is an opportunity to do basically, of course, there is a standard Western Armenian literary language, and it has its own relationship with the dialects. So that's fair. There's no, in other words, it has a unique relationship with the dialects. But with this kind of multimedia works, I think there is a possibility of establishing other kinds of relations with the dialects. And it's part of the memory work, which is kind of, again, I would say disobedient and doesn't quite fit into these categories. So in that sense, that's interesting to see how what kinds of connections through the sounds, through the lived experience that Arsinée Khanjian is talking about, and also living, right? Through the images, to the photographs that Hushamadian pays so much attention to the metaphors, the graphic work that Silvina, you do. I think it's interesting, all of these practices, all of these activities create a different way of activating, evoking these dialects, right? Different from what a standard literary language like Western Armenian would do. Mm-hmm. And of course, Igor Boledian, whom you mentioned, Silvina, also in his literature, he deals with dialects all the time. And so we can look at it and we can think about it and we can compare and contrast. But this is also, I think, another way of doing it. So this is just a little addition to the conversation that is going on.
I mean, what I would like to say, following a bit what you just said, actually, is that, I mean, as we know, and this is like nothing to emphasize, but we have not only lost lives and territory or space with the genocide, we have lost one of the most valuable elements of any culture, which is culture itself, arts, creativity, architecture. The most physical one has been destroyed, often eliminated, and by purpose, by design, but what has disappeared almost instantly has been the real expression of culture. For instance, I found out, and that's why I'm so thankful to Mıgırdiç Margosyan that he came up with this, and he is the very last actual person, one of the very last actual people who come from Diyarbakır. Perhaps there are some Armenians still, they say, or they don't say they are in Diyarbakır or Dikranagerd, but in the case of Mıgırdiç Margosyan, he made a point and he wrote a storyline along other writers around the world, like in Quebec, when they write in the Joual dialect in a French context, their history, sorry, not their history, but their stories. But what I would like to add is that one of the losses of Diyarbakır, which sounded to be a very creative environment, is theater, for instance. And I asked to Silvina, when I found out about it, if Hushamadyan can find, there is no way to find this very well-practiced art form, which is theater. Now, suddenly this brings me back again, that disobedience, the emotional and mental disobedience, thinking, well, why my uncle and my father and as more so professionally myself have been in theater all these years, I mean, and wanted to be in that particular form of expression. So there is something that has been absolutely lost, and it's impossible for me to find this. I've been really trying to find this theater tradition that must have been somewhat or somehow documented, at least through plays written, but it seems until now there is no more trace of that. So how that completely annihilated memory of an expression of an artistic form is coming back to the future generation is going to be the challenge also to keep up, because we're not only losing the dialects, as you know, Silvina, you know, it's like we don't, and Garen would know about this as much, and yourself, Banu, but we're also losing the Western Armenian ability to express ourselves. So what do we rely on to pass along to the future generation? And maybe this experience is a sad in terms of nostalgic and memory, but also very positive and happy opportunity to see that through multimedia and multimedia thinking, you can access memory again in different forms that are more pertinent to our identity or our children's identity in that manner.
I just want to briefly say I love this idea of disobedient memory very much. Also because as I had an opportunity to watch the film previously and then a few times in preparation and with you together tonight as well, I thought about how all these different elements, we haven't even talked about all of them, some of the photographs that Silvina used, she colorized herself. She used Armenian fabrics that are overlaid over the image, excuse me, as well as footage that she took herself, I believe, and she visited Diyarbakır, or more contemporary footage. And so it's also disobedient in this kind of more restrictive memory work that looks at a past in the past, but rather it recalls to us, and also through your voice, it's been a lot commented on apparently on YouTube, Arsinée. It really is a different kind of recall and calling into the present that I just wanted to mark once again as we're talking about it and had the opportunity to watch it together. If you allow me, I just want to share 2 comments from YouTube with you. Ayşegül Altınay writes, very moving. Thank you, Silvina. Thank you, Arsinée. And thank you, Mıgırdiç Margosyan. And thank you to Aras for the beautiful coming together of layers of creativity and sharing. I am deeply touched. Isin Baktash writes, the writer, the director, the narrator, the project are great. In fact, it exemplifies an original point of view towards history via photographs, daily objects, words, names, discourse, gender analysis. The uses of ornaments and color effect are very inspirational. And they thank you for your works and your participation. Silvina, I know you had originally intended for the event to be around 1 hour. I wonder if you would like to say a few more words as we're closing, as well as Garan and Arsinée, of course, as well.
Yes, I would like to connect with what we were saying before, the comments that you had from Aisha Gül and the other person. Yeah, for me, it's a way also to reinvigorate, because I have the feeling, for example, when I discovered and I could access the Western Armenian literature through translations, that is a treasure that is sleeping and waiting for me. So I am, in a sense, so passionate about it, and I want to share this great literature with others, even without that they are able to understand. Even me, I'm not able to appreciate fully in the dimensions of the Western Armenian, but through a multi-channel situation like this is, like you, also maybe also to motivate some young people, you know, to learn Western Armenian, and in a sense it's a kind of invigorates and giving a breath of life in this written language by that we have. Yeah, after a genocide and a very long time of being in how do you say, eine Starre, in paralyzed, with responsibility to prove something that happened. And then I feel that, for example, when we had the 100 years and we were all these artists together in the Armenian Pavilion in Venice, we were in a sense so relieved that we gave everything and we did, but we want to say, like, not forget, of course, never forget and ask for justice, but also we want to say other things. We have a lot to say. We are much more than that. So, and I would be very happy if I can continue to be inspired and I can bring, let's say, these really beautiful literary works in this sense in circulation, and share with people that speak other languages, and open the circle. Yes, and so this is, yeah, I would say to as last idea.
Well, what I would like to say is, because you brought up the word responsibility, and this is a word and a concept that I have struggled with all my life, obviously, between what I wanted to do instinctively into in terms of my personal interest in things of life and creativity, along with, in parallel, this heavy sense of responsibility to bring justice, to bring focus, to bring attention, recognition of my history and my identity. And I don't know if I manage or not successfully, but I certainly, what I hope is that for the next generation, fourth or fifth at this point, of Armenians around the world, and in Armenia, of course, that there is a fluidity of not anymore having the responsibility versus the personal choices, but that everything would be sort of coming together because of different influences of observation of who we are and so on. But I would like to bring the example of Silvina's son, who is also in the credits and who did the music, improvised music. So Avedis is a very interesting for me young man who has obviously taken on a tradition that is, I don't think he has been exposed musically. I don't know if Avedis speaks Armenian or not, but where I want to take the conversation is not only to the importance of still continuing to discover and even create literature, but there are many other art forms that can translate into Armenian sensibility of what that historically has been, how that history has become or adapted or integrated itself into different cultures or realities in the diaspora in Armenia. So, I mean, there is also dance form. We're not even addressing that. Visual arts and so on. So what I'm hoping, what I'm saying is that all the cultural expressions that we had in the past are important to discover and bring out from for oblivion and that long silence that they have been sort of imprisoned in, but also to be able to give to the further generations of Armenians to be able to do something with it according to their times and still be able to call part of their Armenian identity, pursuit, interests. So I think this transmission, the notion of transmission, which would be transformative to the individual and the art forms, has to expand into different ways and into different disciplines, including, of course, the literature being one of the most obvious ones. And so, I mean, in terms of a professional work, I would say that probably outside of Armenia, I'm talking now, in the diaspora, the Lebanon diaspora, and etc. I think literature has been the prominent comeback post-traumatic cocultural fracture of the culture, but there are things like music that could happen, and they have happened, but not as much as literature. And I would love to see those forms also to be inspired by the sense of identity.
If I may just echo what Arsinée Khanjian just said, I love the idea of it is, to me, it is one of the important responsibilities that we have, let's say as diaspora Armenians, is to create this possibility of open-ended flexible form of transition, transgenerational cultural transition. So I love that idea. I think the film does that in so many ways, with Avedis's participation as well. Yes, there are traditional forms of giving culture to the next generation, but it's so interesting when we experiment with other different ways of perpetuating things. So I love that idea.
If you allow me, and if you to take a little bit more of your time, as we have some more questions and comments coming in, I'd like to share a question by narrated. She says, "Thank you very much for sharing the film with us. It was wonderful to watch the movie together and have the chance to hear the comments of all the panelists. I'm curious to hear more about the selection or creation of images and the editing process, since they both resonate with Silvina's practice in general and speak very well to Margosyan's text. They indeed fill a gap in memory, as Silvina beautifully said, while she mentions the lack of images in her childhood."
Yes, I mean, I have to say, since I memory is my daily work, my daily bread, sorry. I call the performance like this. Memory is my daily bread. So I am surrounded, since I was looking for those images, I found them together with my partners from Hushamadian, Vahe Tahtian, Elke Hartman, and all other collaborators from Hushamadian. And I work daily with old images. And so as I put the source, for example, of Project SAVE, I am surrounded by them. So this is my choice, was looking for old images, but also I researched for images from the 40s and the 50s, and my own archive that I did when I was there in 2014. I was photographing and filming also. This is how I was choosing the images. Of course, it had to relate to the place and to relate to the text. And one of the elements that was very important for me were the patterns of the textiles, the texture. I work very often with texture, and some of course, with some of the archives or the quality of the image was not, let's say, that good. So sometimes I really took one single ornament, I create a pattern myself. So in the sense I am recreating, because maybe in a piece of textile, you had this detail only in a corner, but with my contemporary, an artistic input, I did out of it like a pattern as maybe it is a carpet. So there is the point where I intervene as artist and recreate and give a kind of, like this contemporary breathing into it. And also I love, for example, I mean, when I discover putting these layers, the children, when the naked children are swimming and suddenly their skin is like with this texture, I like very much. So it's one of the points where I wanted to reach that part. I don't know if I answered, but it was
Thank you so much. Let me also please share with you a comment by Ece Kucak. They say, thank you all very much for this conversation. I was deeply moved by the film, an inspiring example of how we can create art in Western Armenian without obeying to the memory regime of recognition. Thank you, Silvina, for defying the historiographic perversion and showing us, in reference, and showing us once again that artwork produced in Western Armenian are more than mere documents of an archive. And Diana Gazarian says, the means Silvina uses in memory storytelling are really inspirational. The dialogue between the visualization and the voice by Arsinée create a harmonized atmosphere. I wanted to shower you in these comments as well, because we're unable to see it. And if I'm looking down on my phone, it is for that reason. So forgive me if I'm sort of going up and down on the screen. Would you like to say some final comments before we close? It was so lovely, and thank you for staying on longer than planned and staying through it.
If I may just,
please.
I just want to encourage Silvina and Arsinée Khanjian and everyone else who is doing this kind of work to continue doing that. That's all I want to say.
Yes, and as final remark, I want to make public that the film, of course, is produced by Hushamadian, so it will be published in the website. So everybody that had not the opportunity to see the film now, it can always access the website, and in the category videos, the film will be published. And before the film will be published, it looks like it will be first broadcasted also in the Pomegranate Film Festival at the end of the month. So we are waiting to show the film there, and then it's accessible for everybody, because sometimes, you know, like filmmakers, of course, they do the films and send to the festivals and you can't access, no? But I don't do this to show only in festivals, because festivals are not that can see the film. But I really want as much as possible to distribute the film, and that everybody has the opportunity. And this is one of the very interesting things that I like, this format of Yesayan Salonu. And if there is something positive out of so terrible things that this pandemic brought to us, is the opportunity to have this hybrid events, and especially for us, I mean, I like real events really a lot, but as an Armenian diaspora and cultural producers, where we don't have a huge country with a huge amount of money financing festivals and theaters and whatever, to discover this format and then this Salon Littéraire from Yesayan Salonu, and be able to broadcast to the whole world. When I was putting the times, because friends from Argentina asked me, friends from Los Angeles asked me, friends from here and from there, I was doing the list and seeing like, I don't know, 8 cities that I was looking for the time. So this opportunity, I think, is a great tool. So thank you very much for doing this, Laura and Aras, and I hope I will follow now your events, and I hope much more people will follow these events. We need more places to come together like this.
Well, I would like to say that since I came to learn about Khanjian and their project and mandate, and actually it was through one of the earlier works that Silvina had collaborated with Khanjian, I don't know, before 2015 perhaps, but it was at 2015 that I discovered about that work. And when I was in Berlin and doing my own project at the Maxim Gorky Theater about Aurora Mardiganian, I have to say that Khanjian is doing an incredible work, not only from a historical archival perspective and, accumulating documents, images and all that, but also giving the opportunity for artists to go into these projects and support the possibility of creating those alternate versions of more contemporary work. So thank you, Khanjian. Of course, thank you to the Gulbenkian Foundation for their support of this particular project, and Western Armenian in general being very much on their mind, as it should be. But I would like also to say a last word to anyone who's watching, and any Armenian or non-Armenian who would like to be in the creative process in whatever discipline, that it's never too anachronistic or too particular or too aside to create work on specificity. And in this case, for instance, the project was on, yes, Diyarbakır, the city and its villages around and all that, through the stories, but it was done into the, very much into the particular humor and the dialect of that city. So it becomes very, very specific. I wouldn't say small, but very specific. So no artistic sort of intention should fear that specificity. That specificity actually creates something more unique than the effort of becoming or trying to translate into the big story and the history. For me, this work is as important as a big film on the genocide of the Armenians, for instance. And again, because probably it does leave out the political initial resistance and brings you into something that has disappeared or is on the verge of, like our climate situation, on the verge of disaster. So here we are more interested because there is something specific. So I would say any generation, for the future generation of creators, artists, they should not fear to be focused on something that seems to be of interest to them viscerally, and then they have an opportunity to translate it to us in their art forms. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Arsinée. I think, you know, it's a beautiful note to end on, is that exactly, I think, in what you say and how you approach this project, and also Hushamadyan, which will, as Silvina said, host or be the home for the film eventually, that exactly this kind of specificity is also something that transcends that specificity at the same time. The more specific you get, the more open it becomes also, I think, for connecting on different levels across disciplines, across time, across space. So what I'm left with is to thank you very much for your time, for your words, for your interventions, and all of those who have watched us and bore with us through technical difficulties. It's been wonderful to see you all. It's hard to say goodbye, but I wish you a very nice evening wherever you are, or rest of the day. And thank you ever so much to Yesean Salona, to Aras for hosting us once more. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.